Excellent. Thank you. Hi, I'm Dave Gustin. I am the former director of the School for the Future of Innovation Society and organized the Enlightening lunch for SFIS through mostly through the humanities and through the HSD course 610 colloquium for doctoral students that I teach, but everybody is welcome to the Enlightening lunch. Today, it is a pleasure to introduce Danae Hernández Cortés. She will be talking about her research and equity implications of environmental policy. This semester for the Enlightening lunches, we've been going through new faculty within the School for the Future of Innovation Society in the College of Global Futures. And Danae is one of the faculty that we have the privilege of sharing with the School of Sustainability. And she will speak for about 30 minutes or so. We'll have a generous amount of time for Q&A afterward. And if this were an ordinary situation, we would have treated you to pizza or falafel or something like that. And hopefully you'll stick with us until we have the chance to do that again. So without further ado, Danae.
Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you everybody for being here. Oh, thank you. And apologies that I got out here a little bit late, but I got lost. Apparently the campus is really big. And anyway, so here today I'm going to be presenting the equity implications of environmental policy. These are two of my current research projects. And as an announcement, I am currently trying to recruit students, and I'm also trying to advertise one of my classes for next semester. So if you're interested, please let me know. I will be very happy to talk more about what my research is and what type of methods I'm using for my research. So
I think the audio went down.
Oh,
yeah, sorry, just a second. Why it's doing that? That is the correct. All right. People on Zoom, is the audio working correctly? Better now? Okay. Zoom did something funky. Zoom can do that.
perfect. No worries. Let me know if something goes wrong, and I will try to repeat. So I'm very excited to present this. And again, these are two of my projects, but all of my projects currently are inspired by one thing.
You need to click from the actual.
For this to work.
Yeah, because it's not the actual window.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So right now we are in a worldwide energy transition. So as you can see, these are the renewable sources of energy right now worldwide. And as you can see, we're going through some very steep increase on where do we get our energy. And these changes on energy use can really be favorable to reduce our carbon footprint and our greenhouse gas emissions as a whole planet. However, we are also in a pivotal point in trying to see how our decisions in what energy sources we're using and what policies we're trying to use to decrease our greenhouse gas emissions. These policies will have implications for generations and generations. And my research tries to analyze which policies are more efficient in trying to get us to a renewable energy systems, but also an equitable system where households are able to breathe good air, where households are able to access good electricity, low electricity prices, and that they don't have to experience so many issues that have been exacerbated by the current economic system. So these energy transitions are happening right now around the world. There we go. And many economies have plans for decarbonization in the future. So as you can see, you can hear it in the news all the time. There are current efforts to try to decarbonize our economy. However, it's very unclear how decarbonization will occur in the future. And for us, this means that there's a lot of opportunities to try to influence policy making and policy decisions to try to see what type of energy future we want. Different paths for decarbonization can have different distributional outcomes in the sense that some policies might be more effective trying to help low-income and minority communities than others. So my research is going to try to know how can we examine those policies such that we can achieve an equitable future that is also that is also better in the terms of energy that we're using, and that it decreases the global greenhouse gas emissions that we are emitting. So I tend to start my talks with this one of these figures, which is that there's a big concern about environmental justice and what type of policies could be exacerbating environmental justice. And what is environmental justice? Well, environmental justice is the fair, when there's environmental justice, there's a fair share that all of the groups are experiencing the same air quality, the same access to good public services, etc. So as you can see, that's not the case currently. And if you compare the poverty rates of some communities in California, they also tend to be the ones that are the most polluted. The same way, if you see it nationally, if you see the amount of pollution experienced by all these groups, Black communities are experiencing a higher share of pollution than white communities. This means that there's not environmental justice across the US and across global. The most vulnerable communities are often the ones experiencing the highest amount of pollution. And my research is going to try to inform how can we revert this path in our future energy transitions. So my research focuses on answering how to design environmental policies that achieve equitable energy transitions and that can revert the past where some vulnerable communities are the ones experiencing the most amount of pollution. This research will inform how energy transitions can increase environmental equality for disadvantaged communities, and how can we enable those policies to create these types of benefits for disadvantaged communities. In terms,
Sorry, that.
oh yeah.
All right, is the audio working now? No, it's not picking up. Oh, there we go. I can see it moving again. All right, sorry about that. I don't know.
So what type of methods I use causal inference methods, and I will describe what causal inference methods are in a moment, together with tools from other disciplines to understand whether some policies can achieve energy transitions while also helping reduce existing environmental disparities. And why I use causal inference methods is because sometimes we care about what is exactly in policies that are enabling disparities, so we can tackle that and avoid that these disparities get exacerbated. So causal inference methods are some quantitative methods using statistics that allows you to get into what is causing such disparities and how we can solve them. That's why I use this type of methods. Let's see. But more broadly, for SFIS students, why do I think that this could be really interesting for you? So first, the question that I think that it's very interesting is how can environmental and energy policy inform technology policy to achieve energy transitions? And this question is something that the world is asking, and I want the students to imagine how technologies can enable us to get to achieve energy transitions. And my research can inform how we evaluate these energy transitions and whether that is working. As you know, as all of you know, technological processes do not exist in isolation. They interact with existing inequities. But public policy can be a driver to enable technology to achieve environmental and energy transitions. However, in order to do so, we need to be careful on how we design environmental and energy policy to enable equity. And my research seeks to understand how we can do so. So if you were to leave this room, I want you to stay with four key takeaways from my research. The first one is that the design of energy policies is important for achieving an equitable energy transition. The second one is that environmental policy can have unintended consequences for disadvantaged areas if we don't understand how technology works and how people use technology. Third, climate policies can help reduce environmental inequality, which is even more important for us to know which policies can achieve energy transitions and which ones cannot. And also, infrastructure for energy transitions might benefit income groups differently. So we need to be aware of what type of technology and infrastructure we tend to decide and how different groups with different levels of socioeconomic inequality, with different levels, socioeconomic levels, can respond to such decisions. So first, I am going to present you this paper that is current work in progress, which is talking about the distributional consequences of incomplete regulation. In this paper, I am motivated with a simple fact that energy transitions will likely involve policy interventions. These policy interventions will tend to, they can be sometimes incomplete. What does it mean that a regulation is incomplete? Incomplete regulation means that it does not cover all sources of pollution. So imagine if you are in the US, you might have very strict regulation, environmental regulation, but if you are in other places like Mexico, maybe there's not the same levels of regulation, and some factories or some firms can decide where to pollute and can go to Mexico if they don't have such a strict regulation. So this is what I'm talking about. Now, what are the possible reasons why these incomplete regulations occur? First of all, they can be monitoring costs. So maybe some areas are very hard to monitor and it's better not to regulate them. And other one is maybe there are different political incentives. Maybe some areas, you don't want to regulate some areas because you don't want them to get cleaner air. So these are some of the reasons that incomplete regulation occurs. These incomplete regulations can have unintended consequences and affect the most vulnerable communities if exists this type of if this type of political incentives do not want to regulate some polluting sources. So in this paper, I am going to answer two questions. The first one, do firms reallocate pollution when there's incomplete regulation? And I will explain a little bit more about my setting in a second. And second, what are the distributional consequences of incomplete regulation? So who is more affected by this type of incomplete regulation? I am going to explore this in a field specific policy in Mexico that regulated some sectors of the economy and others did not. And this will allow me to use some causal inference methods that I told you about to try to answer the question. And I am going to use the sugar production in Mexico as a case study because it's a very interesting story where you can see that substitution take place. And this is very important in terms of methodological reasons. There's of course a lot of related literature, but my contribution to this literature is by trying to look who is affected by this incomplete regulation, how is the technology enabling these effects to take place in disadvantaged communities and what we can do about it. So my setting again is the sugarcane sector in Mexico. I will explain you now, Mexico is the 6th largest sugarcane producer in the world and employs nearly 2 million people. There are two main processes when you are processing sugarcane. The first one is the harvest, that you can use either manual or mechanical cut. If you're using manual cut, as is the case in many other developing countries, some of the farmers set their fields on fire in order for them to be able to cut the sugarcane easily. However, if you are cutting the sugarcane easily, you need to employ people because you're cutting it by hand, and it allows you to process it less in the sugar that I will explain in a second. However, as you can imagine, when you set those fields on fire, there will be pollution, and that pollution can have very high consequences for the population living nearby, who also tend to be the poorest people in Mexico. Now, the second process is processing that occurs in a mill. This mill takes the sugarcane that was already harvested and processes the sugarcane and becomes sugar. Now, these ones are also heavily polluting but they are located farther away in urban areas that are exposed to, that are less poor than the ones that are living in these rural areas. My research is going to take advantage of the following thing. The people exposed to sugar mills, that are the ones in blue, as you can see, they are less poor than those that are affected by sugarcane burning. So the ones that are affected by sugarcane burning are the ones in orange, the ones in blue are the ones exposed to sugar mills. And what I am going to be using is the following process. So again, as I told you, there are two processes, one in the field, one in the mill. If you are a sugarcane harvester, you have two alternatives to cut your sugarcane. First, you can use fires and manual work to cut this sugarcane. Then it goes to the field, but because you are using fires, it also creates pollution. However, you get clean sugarcane because these fires help you clean the sugarcane and the excess vegetation of it. Then this goes to the mill. The mill is also polluting to a lesser extent, then creates sugar and it goes to the market. The second alternative is instead of using fires, you're using an agricultural cutter, again in the field. However, your sugarcane is dirty. It goes to the mill, needs an additional process, becomes sugar and goes to the market. Now, again, this process that is up here requires less processing than the one that you need right here. But this is really interesting because the policy that I will be evaluating regulated this part of the process and did not regulate this part of the process. What I'm going to be doing is to try to see if those mills shift their production from here to here, creating more pollution to the communities that are exposed to these fires that also tend to be poorer. Meaning whether this energy transition, where you are imposing an environmental policy in the mill, is creating environmental inequality by shifting where production is occurring. And as you can see, this is a technological policy because it's trying to regulate one policy one process that is occurring here. However, they are not aware that as the technology function in the supply chain, it can be shifted and it can shift where pollution is occurring. So again, this is the extent of sugarcane, where the sugarcane fields are located in the light gray, and the little circles are the ones that were not regulated, and the little triangles are the ones that were regulated by this policy. And this part that some facilities are regulated and some other facilities are not regulated is very important for my following method. So my research has three main methods. The first one requires collecting and analyzing satellite data from fires and pollution in the whole in Mexico. Then I use this satellite data to link it to administrative data on technology use and also on inputs and outputs at the mill level data, and try to evaluate whether as a result of the policy, pollution increased in those areas that were regulated. And how am I going to do it? I am going to compare regulated versus unregulated facilities before and after the policy occurred. At the end, after the policy, I will be able to tell if this policy exacerbated the use of fires, the use of pollution, and the pollution in most vulnerable communities. So what are my results? My results, I show that after the regulation, the number of harvesting fires increased. The same way, the amount of pollution coming from these fires is also increasing, and the amount of pollution in the mills decreased, because that's what you should expect if this pollution, if these fires, if the facilities were actually substituting where pollution occurred. As I told you before, when you are Using fires, you're also using manual workers that cut the sugarcane. And I see that after the regulation, they also increase the number of agricultural workers working in this field. And I don't see any change in total sugar right here. So now I use those methods to try to analyze what are the impacts on health. And I show that after this happened, the birth weight of the newborns born after the policy decreased. I also see that the probability of a newborn being very low birth weight increases, and also the probability of having very preterm births increasing, meaning that this regulation and that caused more pollution also exacerbated health disparities, because in these little squares are the most vulnerable mothers that are using this type of insurance called Seguro Popular, and it's the one that is used for the most low-income people in Mexico. And as you can see, the effects are higher for all of them, meaning that regulation can create pollution inequality and also health inequality if it's not taken seriously. And as a summary of my findings, energy transition policies that can be incomplete regulation, that involve this incomplete regulation, can have unintended consequences. And it's very important to understand pollution sources and their responses to the regulation to try to understand how we can enable technology to decrease these possible responses. As I told you by this, incomplete regulation can cause other environmental problems, particularly in places with a high share of vulnerable communities. And how we design these policies is important, because how the users of the technology will respond to regulation will depend on the success of a regulation or not. So the main takeaway from the ones that I told you before is that the design of energy policy is important for achieving an equitable energy transition, and also environmental policy can have unintended consequences for disadvantaged communities. Now, this other project that I will going to show you, it's also in Mexico. I not only work in Mexico, I also work in the US and globally. But this project is, I will really benefit from you thinking, foreseeing what you think about it. In this paper is going to be analyzing how can we enable transportation policies to have an impact on low-income urban populations. So as you know, transport sector produces nearly 28% of greenhouse gases in the US and 16% of it globally, making it one of the main sources of global greenhouse gases globally. Public transportation projects can be considered as a way to reduce global greenhouse emissions and pollution. And there are many existing plans to create and expand public transit networks across the world. So for example, East Asia has the two plans of very big public transit options. And Latin America has a bunch of plans also trying to improve the transit access for its residents. So my question in this, the question that my co-authors and I are trying to achieve in this paper is whether public transportation projects can meet the growing demand for mobility across the world. And this is the main motivation, and it is that the world is increasing its income. But as the income increases, also the use of private forms of transportation increases. So for example, if you see the income per capita of all the countries in the world, you will see this positive relationship between the GDP per capita, the amount of vehicles per 1,000 inhabitants. This means that as the world tends to increase its income, it also increases the amount of private vehicle use. So my question, the question that we're trying to see here is whether we can break that link and we can try to create public transit that people feel comfortable to use, that people want to use, that it gets it to the places they want to go, even though their income increases. So here, this is the existing literature. So the existing literature shows that there is, again, this positive relationship between the types of transportation used and the income. So as you see, the OECD countries have been increasing a little bit their energy consumption, but this is way higher for middle income countries. So we can expect that the amount of emissions coming from those middle income countries to increase if we don't try to implement this type of public transit opportunities that can make them feel safe to use that type of technology. This also happens in other places. So for example, in Mexico, you can see that again, as income increases, there's also a positive relationship with the number of households using a private car. So this question the question of this paper is to try to see how we can design public transit policies that are used by everyone and that can benefit everyone and break this relationship. So this question again is, how does public transit evolve as and whether there are some modes more successfully increasing their users than others? What are the reasons why people decide to go to some users and to some types of transportation than others? And whether these projects affect income groups differently, meaning whether some projects are better trying to help low-income households than others. So again, there's a lot of literature trying to investigate some of these, whether public transit is effective or not. But in our paper, what we're trying to do is to see whether whether people with different incomes adopt transit differently. And our setting will be Mexico City, that has experienced a very rapid population growth in the last few decades, and it's also the second largest public transit system in the Western Hemisphere. But also, the automobile use has been increasing a lot the last couple of years. So before, in 1980, there were 124 automobiles by 1,000 people. Right now, there's around 267 automobiles by 1,000 people. And this type of this causes severe congestion and pollution. What we're going to be using in this paper, it's again use causal inference methods drawn by statistics to try to analyze these two types of interventions that took place at different times and see whether people are responding to the implementation of these transit infrastructure policies. This is a map of Mexico City, and this shows you extent on where it was building the lines that it created. So as you can see, some of the yellow ones were metros that were built after 1994. The black ones are the metros before 1994, and the blue ones are another type of public transit that I will explain in a second, called the Metrobus, which is kind of a trolley. It's like a public transit infrastructure that it doesn't require a subway. Okay, so how am I going to analyze this? I am going to collect historical maps of public transit interventions in Mexico City throughout the years and access to data on travel patterns by people, their income, their how long it takes them to go from their house to their work, etc. throughout the years. I also use one thing called machine learning to try to analyze how we can predict the income of these people over time. And then what we do is analyze differences in transit adoption by distance to the metro, to see whether being closer to the metro or to this other public transit infrastructure called Metrobus makes you more likely to use that type of infrastructure. And here, what we find is that after the implementation of these transit policies, we see that the use of transit increases a lot. So the blue is the increase in transit. And as you can see, implementing a metro and a metro bus called BRT is actually increasing the amount of users that are using any type of public transit infrastructure. And it also, what is very interesting here is that it also decreases the use of private vehicles. So people are actually leaving their cars to use it, but it's more effective to this type of public transit, which is BRT, compared to metro. And we are currently trying to analyze what are the characteristics of this type of technologies that make people more willing to use this type of technology than the other. And finally, what we do is we try to analyze what is the difference across income. So here, what we do is to try to see the probability that someone uses transit by levels of income. And as you can see, the lowest income people are the ones most likely to use the public transit infrastructure. So public transit infrastructure is helping those people to get from their houses to their work, which can indeed help them in terms of cost and in terms of time on where to get to their homes in time. When we look at the probability of using any vehicle, which is very concerning to us, is that indeed the probability of increasing, the probability of using a car is increasing as income rises. So we can expect that these transit infrastructure projects might be threatened by the fact that people are increasing their income and are moving away from transit. So our next steps is to try to analyze what are the determinants of people choosing car instead of using transit systems, so that we can design those transit systems in a way that people use them and helps us decrease pollution. And again, here in my research, these are the main takeaways. The design, again, of energy and transportation policies is important for achieving an equitable energy transition, and infrastructure for energy transitions might benefit income groups differently, which is exactly what I'm interested in. So now, and a bit of marketing for the course that I will be teaching next semester, if it allows me, I am going to be teaching Sales 524, that it's also, I'm trying to list it for SFIS students, so you are welcome to take it if you want to take it. And in this class, I am going to be trying to teach the students how to think about this type of energy transitions. What is the theory of these energy transitions, and how can we use data to try to test if these energy transitions are working or not. Among some of the special topics that I will be covering is how energy transitions can enable us, how these type of methods can enable us evaluating climate change policy and equity concerns about climate change policy and energy markets in developing countries, if you're interested in such topics. Anyway, with any more to say, I want to thank you for the opportunity for me to talking a little bit about my research, and I'm really looking forward to your questions and comments. Yes.
Thank you for the presentation.
Yes.
I have both of my class here today, so
Yes.
also jump forward to the question. But the one I have for you is it's pretty obvious in the second case, I think, desire law, right? Get people to stop using cars, transportation, less pollution, electricity, and therefore
Yes.
What's the desired outcome in the first case?
Yes.
Right, because it's one of these things where you're deciding this community gets pollution or this community gets pollution. And obviously, when we talk about distribution of benefits and losses, somebody gets screwed in the process, right? So, like, what's the desired outcome?
I think that one way to try to fix it is to try to be able to regulate both places. So to the extent that we are aware of how this substitution occurs, when it's occurring, we can try to do preventive checks and trying to see maybe when we implement an energy policy in this part of the supply chain, we can implement another environmental policy in this other one, or see how people are reacting such that we can avoid those unintended consequences. consequences. But we have been talking a lot with, I have been talking a lot with some of the sugarcane regulating the sugarcane entity in Mexico, and they say that they have been trying to create this type of incomplete regulation again and extend it to the other people, to the other mills that were not regulated. And I said, no, please don't do that. But what we concluded there is that they are going to try to pass also some regulations to try to avoid them getting in the field. And actually, one policy that can be implemented, that has been implemented in Brazil, is to, instead of using fires to cut the sugarcane, is to use mechanical cutters and subsidize the adoption of mechanical cutters to just move it all together and stop the pollution there. So I think that that type of policies could be complementary to avoid this type of consequences.
I guess a follow-up question.
Yes.
To that is, what happens to the people?
Yes,
Right?
yes.
If you start, move to a mechanized process, and then
Yes.
you have mass, employment, other kinds of social justice.
Yes.
So
Yes.
this is like the domino effect of policy.
Yes, yes, no, and that is very true. Indeed, in the case of Brazil, some researchers show that the number of manual workers decreased, but that they were employed via other and other sectors that were able to use their skills and actually saw improvements on the long term, which is very important for the energy transition discussion. There are so many workers that could be left out of work because of all of these regulations. So I hope that by looking at how these responses occur, we're able to tell sectors and policymakers how to design these policies such that there are not such negative consequences.
Thank you.
Yes.
There are a couple of questions waiting on Zoom.
Perfect.
I'm waiting to get on there, so keep in the room and then we'll go to Zoom.
Perfect. Yes.
I'm just really curious about your field research. Did you go in person to find these things out?
So I did go in person. So a little bit of background. I'm from a sugarcane region. My grandpa worked in one of the fields, so that is one of the background. I lived there, and I did go to talk to some sugarcane workers. But how I started this research, and this is probably one that this is probably useful to hear in case you are experimenting that in your research. My research started completely different from how it looked like. I just wanted to look at the impacts of fires on health. And then talking to this, in the field visits, and also talking to the Sugarcane Regulation Commission, they told me about these things happening. So that is why I thought that this could be done. Yeah. Are there any other questions?
So we've got one from
Yes.
the Zoom chat. Farah is asking, what role and responsibility do technology entrepreneurs have or should have in the design of transportation policies? As there is effort to work in these policies, entrepreneurs are perpetuating the car model. So is there something, not on the regulatory side, but in for the entrepreneurs to address there?
So I think that this is a very good point. And there are current discussions about electric vehicle adoption in the US that could limit the amount of pollution in this. I think that entrepreneurs could have some role on this type of on emitting more pollution due to greenhouse gas and other pollutants. I think though that it is a systems approach. We perpetuate that they do that. So that's why understanding these systems is important. Because by understanding it, we're able to see whether it's policy only or if it's their or it's their decisions what causing. And if you had to ask me, I think that is more about the policy enabling this than the individual decisions, but that's up to discussion.
And just, I'll follow up on that as well.
Yeah.
Is there a way, as a part of your agenda, to try to sort out, on balance, where effort would be more effective? So as Kirk sort of pointed out, in the first case, you've got this ambiguity between which policy path you might want to take. In the second case, sure the policy that you want to choose is fairly clear, but there are multiple contributors to a policy that would minimize automobiles.
Yeah.
So do you have a sense, for example, in that case, what contribution to, getting people out of their cars, the particular policy that you're focusing on is? What share of the, whether you want to measure this in carbon or whether you want to measure it in particulates or whatever, what share are you addressing when you're addressing public transportation versus cars versus, incentives for electric vehicles versus, that.
Yes, and actually I think that that's part of what I want to do in the future, is trying to address each part of this, each type of intervention that will be more effective, and what are the drivers. And using these types of methods and using these types of data could be really helpful for that. And I think that what you're suggesting, Dave, it's very, it's exactly what we're thinking. We're a little bit limited on how much we can do because of the data, but it's definitely something that we're trying to do, and we're also trying to do. And this type of research was inspired by some of my experience in Mexico, but now I'm trying to look for some interesting Arizona cases where we can explore these methods into practice. And if you're interested in learning more about that, please email me. I will be very happy to hear what you have in mind. Are there any other questions?
I'll follow up with you.
Yes.
Just a note for anyone here, the microphone levels are a little low, so if you could try and speak up as much as you can, that would really help everyone online.
So thinking about the first case.
Yes.
And thinking more generally about energy markets and so on. How frequent do you think the results are that perverse?
Yeah.
Okay, that regulation is partial and leads to, a somewhat obvious suboptimal outcome rather than something else.
That's a great question. I think that is very interesting question. And I think that depends on the type of policy. Some of the policies can have unintended consequences that you didn't see coming, but other policies is clearly some actors taking advantage of the policy to have undesirable outcomes. There's a lot of research in economics trying to look at unintended consequences. I think that they play a big role, but I think that the types of incentives that these policies design are very important, and we need to be aware of, because by knowing these responses, we can try to avoid them in the first place. Yeah, so I'm not completely sure what is the share between those, but I gotta say that the response, I think that I see policies as a way of motivating behavior. And if we don't create effective policies, we shouldn't be surprised if the share is really high in terms of behavior that we're seeing.
Thank you.
Yes.
I know you said you spoke with the sugarcane regulators.
Yes.
Have you made any steps to lobby these research findings? I have no idea what the process is for that, but I'm just curious about who you're taking these findings to.
Yeah, and
Policy intervention, we don't call lobbying.
Oh, sorry.
we call it outreach.
Somebody else who's not paid by the state.
Yeah, I have tried to do some outreach to them. I think that there's a lot of changes right now after the pandemic happened, because there were so many issues concerning the economic solvency of the mills. So I don't think that there's some intent of regulating them right now, but knowing that these things can happen can inform whether to extend the policy that I told you that they are trying to extend it, and they are aware of that. So hopefully they know about this. Yes.
I found that a common variable in your research is profit and money. A lot of the higher GDP countries receive more output in their cars, which leads to higher greenhouse gas emissions. Is there a way to make sure that energy companies also receive profit? Because You know, as we might be policy interventionists when it comes to advocating for things like climate change, and just fixing those issues, they also have a lot of power when it comes to, you know, lobbying
Yeah.
with interest groups, PACs, and things like that. I know APS here in the Valley is very powerful when it comes to that. So is there a way that we can cut them in? Because I think at the end of the day, their goal is to protect their profits. So
Yeah, and I think that gets to a very good point of what type of incentives we are giving for the people who are responsible of creating this type of technologies. And I think that I am hopeful that as we move forward with energy, the energy transitions that are taking place, they would realize that some of the consumers are not willing to stand be polluting all the time. So as you can see, there's an increase in the number of people trying to get some electric vehicles and trying to change the form of transit to bicycles such that they decrease. So I think that part of how we can achieve that might be through policy, but another part is also by the market. Maybe consumers are no longer willing to just stay in a car that will be polluting or so, and they could see that, and that can also motivate them to change a little bit. So yeah, I hope that I responded to your question. Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions about my research or life?
Anything else from online?
Yes.
We do have somebody that unmuted online.
Oh, yeah.
Yasmin, did you want to ask your question?
Hello, I don't have question at this point.
Oh,
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just following up the discussion. It's really close to my interest, but I don't have a particular question.
oh, yeah. Well, if you ever want to discuss more about this, please email me. That would be great. Good.
You opened the door about conversations of like.
Yes.
Go for it.
Yes.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting when you did your job last year was you just talked about how you came into this field of research. You said, you know, that really, you saw an opportunity at an intersection of research and your personal experiences, and you sort of went for it. And I think that the juniors and seniors here and the graduate students that are online, and I think they were benefit from hearing that.
Yes. Yeah. No. That's good. When I decided to look at economics because, you know, I was in high school and I thought, you know, I just can't stand seeing how much poverty there is very near to my home. And I said, I want to do something about it. So I studied economics because I was like, it seems like poverty, economics, you can try to fix it or not. But as things went by, I realized that one thing that is exacerbating inequalities, especially back home, and as I told you, I am from one of the Sugarcane region, is pollution. And environmental, there's a lot of drivers on poverty, but I think that a very important driver as well is environmental. The environmental aspect that can exacerbate poverty, can exacerbate inequalities, and can create this type of bad outcomes for generations and generations. And I think that that's when I realized that one aspect of trying to fix poverty was also through trying to analyze environmental policy and trying to inform how we can fix it. My parents are from this region, and I think that I was inspired by trying to solve what they experience and what they experience back home. So I think that it's also good to like draw inspiration from that experience to try to bring it to research. I find that good, and if you have that opportunity, I would recommend it. Yes. All right, if there's no further
Last chance for the online folks. Come on, doctoral students. Okay, I'll take it up with you guys later. Okay.
I mean, to be fair, it's been a little while.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, no worries.
There are lots of applause in the chat.
Thank you.